Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today's video will be based on another viewer request for a video. Now, I don't remember who the person was, and I've tried to find the thread that it was on, and I apologize that I can't, but the request was to do a reading using the Tarot Classic deck by Stuart Kaplan, and I don't have it in order at the moment because it too, like the Tarot of Marseille by Fournier, which I guess sparked the conversation, is a very colorful deck. It was the reading I did a few days ago regarding you know whose legacy in 50 to 100 years. And so it's very colorful. Now, this is one of the first decks I ever purchased after the 1JJ Swiss, but I probably didn't buy it for a few years after the 1JJ Swiss. Now, the 1JJ Swiss, but in recent conversations with a friend who puts me in the time and place, 1975, confirmed that that was my first tarot year, was where I was purchasing tarot decks was 1975 and doing tarot. So this I probably wouldn't have bought for a few years, you know, maybe 78. So I don't know what date, and I don't really know what date this was first published, but sometimes, you know, a deck could be on, or a book could be on a shelf for 5 or 6 years, you know, before somebody purchases it. So just because I purchase it on a certain date doesn't mean that's when it was published. It could have been published many years before, but this is an early publication of it. In fact, I no longer have the box. Now, recall in those days, you know, one of the first things, like if we heard any information or if there was any information in any tarot books we might have gotten our hands on, it was like, take the book, take the deck out of the box, put it in wrap it up in silk, or in later years it became a pouch. And so I lost the box. That's one theory. The other theory, because I've kept this deck in this box all these years it's been in this box. But this box is clearly the Tarot of Marseille by Fournier. So it's a different publishing house, and it's a different deck. So it was either mixed up in the store and put in this deck, and I took it home thinking it was this, oh, I'll say the truth, thinking it was this deck, or after I got it home, I confused it with my, I just put it in the Fournier box because at some point I bought the Fournier later on, the Tarot of Marseille deck by Fournier later on. And I don't know what happened. For whatever reason, for a number of years now, it's been stored in the wrong box, and I just kind of keep it in the box. But this box, you can see, is really old and tattered. So it verifies my story before that I had an early publication of the Marseille by Fournier, but I had to replace it. But this deck, I did not have to replace. In fact, after moving cross-country twice, there was a mishap, as I mentioned in other videos, and I was panicking over this deck because I love this deck. I mean, I love all my decks, but this one was not damaged in any way. No cards were missing. No cards were damaged from that move. So this would have, whenever I purchased it in the 70s, this is the original copy that I had. So that was a lot of talking. So I think I'll do my signature spread, which is 9 core cards and then 4 quint cards. And I do want to mention that I also have the book. Now, the book I bought some years later. Let me see what publication this is. It looks like it's in pretty good condition. I probably just read it once and put it aside. Yeah, this is 1972. And this looks like it's the first publication. It doesn't look like it was a reprint. It's in remarkably good condition, but I take good care of things, generally, unless it's beyond my control. But I do take good care of things. So I have not reread this book because I perused it. I mean, I read it many years ago, you know, when I bought the deck. And I perused it recently to see if there's anything on color. Let me see. And I didn't really see anything about color. In fact, there's no color in the index. So I think, you know, the remark about color isn't necessarily something that Stuart Kaplan spoke of. I mean, it's possible that he did, but I'm not seeing it in this book as I just briefly look at it. But we'll see what, we'll see what we see when we do a spread in the color. Now I've never done a interpretation using these cards in a video. I don't think I have, but I have shown these cards many times in video, particularly because as soon as I saw the Gassmann deck, and I guess that one was published. The one I have is probably published by Yves Renaud. I think I have like 4 or 5. I think I have about 4 or 5 publications of the Gassmann. But as soon as I saw that, I completely fell in love with it. And then I realized that this deck was a reinterpretation of the Gassmann. So I think Stuart Kaplan was greatly influenced by the Gassmann when he created this deck. So let me go on camera, shuffle and mix the cards. Think of a question. I'll be right back. Well, sometimes when I don't know what to do a video on, I'll just pull a card, after I shuffle and handle the cards. And well, I already shuffled it again. But the card that popped up was the 10 of Cups. And so I thought, well, how will I formulate a question on that? And I was thinking, well, the 10 of Cups kind of portrays exactly what's happening, because there's such an oversaturation of emotion that's occurring, because every day it's something new every day. And I'm speaking from the perspective of an American citizen, a United States citizen, of how every day it's just something else that just is occurring, I mean, from every direction. I mean, it's just, and I'm sure abroad, some of you are very clever about getting your news from online, so you're aware of what I'm talking about. So I guess the topic would be some type of oversaturation of emotion. Is there a risk when you're oversaturated that you don't care anymore? Right? When you're oversaturated with something, it just becomes so overwhelming, which I think is the tactic. You just oversaturate them, throw it over to them, so they just eventually just tune it out, which I think is a concern, because I think that's exactly what his tactic is, is to just throw everything out there, just get them to the point where they're numb and they become zombies, and then we could do whatever we want. But fortunately, many of us are remaining vigilant. We may take a break, every now and then, but it's never far from the mind, and we're always keeping ourselves abreast. So the question then would be regarding oversaturation of emotion. Let me pull another card. I'll do that right here. Pull another card. Oversaturation of emotion regarding what? Eight of Cups. So it's not as saturated as the 10 of Cups, but it's organized emotion. So taking that oversaturated emotion and organizing it to do what? Organizing it to do what? And this is how sometimes I get my questions. Oh, to topple, maybe. Oversaturation of emotions, or taking the oversaturated stuff, organize it, and then the question was for what? And then here we have, in the context of the question, somebody who's a leader, who is unyielding, certainly the Pope. It was a very controversial card. In some ways, depending on the context of the question, he could be like a counselor, somebody that you trust. Ideally, a Pope is someone that people would have trusted. But there was also a lot of corruption in the papacy, which is why cards 2 through 5, were reimagined. Now, okay, I realize that the Empress and the Emperor were secular, but there was so much corruption that you couldn't remove him without downplaying the emperor either, or the Empress either. So it all comes back to that, doesn't it? So oversaturation of emotions has to be organized and regarding him. Okay, regarding him in what way? You know who. Regarding you know who in what way. Sometimes I go through this before I know what to do a reading on or a question for the video. Oh, the card that fell, top faced where I should have picked it up, was Three of Cups. But my instinct said to just pick it up, and I'm not paying attention to it, except to mention it. Okay, so let's pull another card. Ooh, Ten of Swords. Ooh, another oversaturation. Oversaturation of thought. It could be thought that leads to something of a physical nature. When I see the Ten of Swords, even the Nine of Swords, it kind of can go beyond thought into the realm of action. It is a weapon. So let's do a read on what we need to know regarding you know who and Skum. And Paige, I'm eternally grateful to you for coming up with the diagram of Skum for his sidekick. And I don't mean his vice president, because his vice president is not the second in command. In fact, you know who probably isn't even in command. I think Skum is going to be pulling a lot of the shots. So let's not look at you know who this week. Let's look at Skum this week. Let's see what will be unfolding for him. Okay? So let me flip the camera and lay the cards. Okay, let's see. Oh, boy. Boy, oh boy. I just want to shuffle that in. I don't want to necessarily have that be one of the cards that's pulled easily. You know? Okay. Two Cups. So far, it looks pleasant. Partnership. Let's see if there's a baton or something that agitates it next to it or surrounding it. Coins, they work together. Partnership. A new venture, money-wise. Something to lift his spirits. Lifts his spirits, but then it becomes unstable. Let's see what the quint is. I'm trying to jump ahead of the game here to come up with the quint. So we have 3 and 5 is 8. That would be justice. That would be justice. So he comes up with an idea, some type of partnership, some kind of an idea with someone else. Maybe a money plot, a money scheme, but it becomes unstable. And then the quint card for this row will be justice. Wow, another money card. So he's just not giving up the wheeling and dealing. 8 of Cups. So far it's cups and coins. This is a very well shuffled deck too. Here we go. 10 batons. So this, to me, batons suggest social circles, a collaborative effort in some arena. But it doesn't seem to be his arena, because his arena is all about coins. So this to me represents, to me, in the context of recent readings, the suit of batons, if it turns into like a political kind of reading, represents the people. Has come to mean that to me. Okay, I don't read reversals. My deck got reversed in some way. We have the Queen of Cups. We have 9 swords facing upward. To 8 cups. The front and center is the 8 cups. Wow, look at that. And now 7. So we have 1, 2, 3 cups. 1, 2, 3, no, 4 cups. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 cups. 1, 2, 3 coins, and one of each of the aggressive suits, and they're high numbers. This one's a 10, and this one's a 9. Let me get the quints out here, and then we'll get started. Okay, the quint card is the Fool card. Now, bear in mind that the viewer had asked me specifically to maybe, do a reading or a spread or a video on this deck regarding color, and it is a very colorful deck, and it looks so great in this spread. The way the color plays off of one another. I guess if I were to focus on a prominent color in this deck, it would be yellow. The yellow of the coins, the yellow of Justice's gown, the yellow of the Queen of Cups gown, and even the yellow in the Devil's hairy body. There's a few yellow accents in the Fool, which is the quint for the whole spread. But I see yellow, Now, I don't think there really is any orange in this deck, so yellow is maybe the closest thing that we can say is orange, but it isn't orange. So what color does yellow kind of suggest? Well, it could suggest cowardice. As soon as I was thinking about all the yellow in the deck and in the context of, the question of, or the suggestion of the viewers, like, unless I'm misunderstanding what the question was or the person's intent was. As soon as I saw all the yellow, I was thinking of the Oval Office, which has now become like yellow. And that day when you-know-who and all his bad boys, all his henchmen were attacking President Zelensky, excuse me. I was thinking, when did the Oval Office turn yellow? When did it turn yellow? And then I started thinking of yellow is the color of cowards. Yellow is the color of cowardice. And then when they started insulting President Zelensky for his lack of wearing a suit, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding. Is that all you got? Is that all you got? So if I'm, so since I'm looking at this with the idea of reading it with color, the yellow color comes to mind. And then when I think of the yellow color, I think of the Oval Office, and I think of that day with President Zelensky and the cowardice in that office of you-know-who and all his henchmen. So my head is taking me to that point. So I'm showing you a little bit of the head work that goes on, as I come up with relating the cards to something. Now, this is my signature spread. I know I use it almost exclusively, except for maybe when I do 3 cards and a 4th card. And I use it because I really like this spread. The spread is a great spread. I don't mind if anybody uses it. I just ask that if you use it online or, in any public forum, to just give me credit for having developed it. Now, the way I use it is I lay the 4 cards, the quint cards, immediately after the core 9. I don't lay them later because I think they're a very important feature of the reading, right? This card gives us, I don't know if it will be the outcome, but it gives us the gist. It gives a prominent feature of the gist of the spread. These cards encap each row, so they give us sort of like a idea about the content of each of these rows, further clues, but then they all work around each other and together. The beauty of this spread, I believe, from my perspective, is that there's no positional meanings. It's not like this card in this position means that. You don't have to do any of that because, the cards just speak for themselves and they tell you the story. They tell you what you need to know, and if there's a question in mind and you have multiple questions, frequently you'll get multiple answers to a question that has multiple features. Now, I don't even think Skum was in the Oval Office on the day that this all went down, because certainly they would have noticed that he was another person in the Oval Office without a suit on. Now they think that everyone else is stupid for not realizing that Skum is often in that office with a stupid ball cap and no suit. So, I think they think the rest of the world and the American people, are all stupid for not noticing that, whose second right-hand man not only goes into the office without a suit, but he wears a hat and he doesn't even take it off his frickin' head. So I think when I was trying to pull cards, wasn't the Eight of Cups pulled? So it was like oversaturation of thought when I pulled the Ten of Cups. But then when I pulled the Eight, I think that was part of it, right? And it was like, well, we have to organize that emotional stuff. So here it is front and center, that it has to be organized. So let's look at that. It has to be organized. Now, there's agitation next to it because we have 10 batons, right? So cups and batons don't get along so well because we have water and fire, at least in the way I understand the cards. If you have assigned different elements to the suits, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just like telling you that that's how I do it. And sometimes I think people don't even assign elements to the suits at all. I think it's easier if you do, because then it helps you, especially if you don't do reversals. Like I don't do reversals because I don't need to do reversals. I don't think you need to do reversals. If you have a system whereby you understand the dynamics between suits, I don't think you necessarily have to read reversals, because you can understand if there's an agitation, right? So I think there is an agitation here because there's maybe the question was about Skum. What's the projection for him for the week? What's going on with him? So Skum, from perhaps his point of view, is that he's got something all figured out altogether. There is agitation though. This isn't an odd number, but it's immediately followed by agitation of the people. Now, this is all making me think of in Wisconsin with the April 1st vote for the Supreme Court. It's known, that he's been shelling out money in support of who he wants to win. And also, as an incentive, I think he's donated. I think he's actually starting a campaign of handing out $100 bills to people to vote, with the understanding that they're going to vote the way he wants. And I think that's to the tune of a few million, more than a few $1 million. So he's trying to pay or bribe the way of the Wisconsin vote. Maybe this is about that. Although, if this is in regard to him, does it secure a victory? Oh boy, I hope not. Does it secure a victory? So if you're watching this and you're from Wisconsin, whether you take that $100 bribe or not, you please do the right thing. And if you have anything in your heart that says that that's the wrong thing to vote their way, then please, vote the way that you feel is right. When you're in that voting booth, I don't think anybody's knowing what you're voting unless that's rigged too. So even if you take the $100 bill, not saying you should, because that's all corruption there, but once you're in that booth, you need to do what's right. So I think this here speaks of how far away. Oh, it's just a couple days away too, the Wisconsin vote. So I think this is about the Wisconsin vote. So the idea of, cooperatively giving money to maybe get people on his side. But then it looks like the people are not buying it. But then it still looks like victory. So who's the victory for? Is the victory his? Or is it the victory of the people's? Well, let's look at some of the other cards and see if we can get any more insight into that. I guess one of the reasons why it's confusing to me is because above it we have justice, which suggests, oh, well, justice will prevail. But then below it, we have the undercurrency of the corruption, right? You know, so we have justice and we have corruption underneath kind of a victorious card. So it's, you know, it's like what, it's kind of a mixed signal. Now, granted, I haven't really looked at the rest of these cards, but I'm just struck by that dynamic. Now, for some of you who may be wanting to like use the spread will lead you in the direction, you know, like one of the first things I do, and I think I've mentioned it a few times, is I look front and center. I look at these cards, I look at these quint cards, definitely, because it gives me a flavor, you know, it gives me an idea, right? But then if I look at the core 9, one of the first cards I look at, whether or not I speak on it right away, but I've been starting to speak on it more readily when I do these videos, because I just want you to know what my thought process is. I look at this card because from here it kind of hinges on a few things. However, sometimes I'm not struck by the front and center card, and sometimes something else in another row just speaks to me immediately, and so you just go with what speaks to you immediately. So nothing here like spoke to me immediately except for this row, and because I started at front and center. I hope that all made sense. Now, the next place my eye is taking me is the other row where there's agitation, right? Now, where this is organized agitation of the people, maybe it's organized agitation of the people for victory. I can see that card as being like a victorious thing. But remember, it's from him. It's like what's going on with him, like what will be happening to him. So it might be a temporary victory. It may be a temporary victory. We'll see. But then this row is also a row of agitation. So we have 9 swords. Now, when I originally laid it, truth be told, it pointed down, but since I don't do reversals, I always flip the card up, and so the universe knows that I would flip the card up. Now, if for some reason I didn't catch the reversal and I were to have read it the other way, that would have been okay too, because that's how it was received to me. That was the impression I received from the universe. But since I flipped the cards up, it takes us to the 8 of Cups. So there's agitation here, aggression, right? When I mentioned, like when I see the 9 and 10 of this of the more phallic suits, I start to see aggression, right? So, and the 8 is before 8 is like the organization, and then the 9 and 10 is like the manifestation of the aggression, depending on the context of the question. So we have aggression toward organized emotion. So I'm wondering, and then this row is capped by the devil. I'm wondering if there's going to be I know they're thinking of like of signing off on martial law on April 20th, which is sick because it's like it's got two. 420 represents two things in Skum's mind: his predilection for cannabis. I think I'm allowed to say that, although at the moment it seems like he's a ketamine addict, and also a historic evil individual's birthday, which was 420. And there's talk that they're going to initiate martial law on April 20th. Will it be in response to the Queen of Cups, who she might be. Now, if it has something to do with the Wisconsin court, Supreme Court vote, and I don't really know who it is that Skum wants in or who he doesn't want in, but could this be the victor of that? And if this person is the victor, could it be all the more reason why they'd want to use force? I don't know about that. But the force seems to be coming as a result of a Queen of Cups, whoever she might be. So the Queen of Cups initiates something that takes the emotions, which is, now you notice that this is red, right? So we don't just get a sense of, I mean, this is like violent red, right? I mean, this is like red. You know, it's the only blatantly red thing in here, except for the wings and the suit of the fool and the sword of justice. But this is like, you know, there's a lot of red here in a sea of yellow. So to me, this seems like physical unrest and danger. Danger happening as a result of, in response to the Queen of Cups, who I don't know who she is. But perhaps the Queen of Cups is trying to take the emotions to another direction. Because I see 7 as a transcendent number, right? A number of taking us to the next level in whatever realm that the suit happens to be in. So we have a lot of, you know, emotion, right? We have the organized emotion, and maybe the organized emotion now. Oh, but look what comes next. The organized emotion that ends with the devil. So I don't know if this woman has anything to do with the Supreme Court vote, but something about her will trigger, or something after her, something in her name, or something in her honor, or something about her triggers, and it goes back to the emotions, right? Triggers something physical. Could it be the 420 martial law? But it stirs things up again emotionally, and then it takes us to a wicked, oh man. So does this mean that Skum will have a good week in his view? But we just really see the depravity, the level of depravity, you know? Now the top row looks so promising, you know? Now it's his perspective. A partnership, an opportunity, I think I already spoke on it. An opportunity, you know, for money, perhaps to pay. Yeah, I think I already spoke on this. So like he has the idea of spending money to affect the Supreme Court justice, the vote for the Supreme Court in Wisconsin. Flanked here, well, by 2 women. So I think she has something to do with the Supreme Court then. Because you see the dynamic, and they're both in yellow. One has a sword and one is master of her emotional realm, you know. She's not surrounded by batons, so she's not a overly emotional basket case of an emotional person. She's supported by coins. Okay, swords can be agitation. They could be. But I think it's agitation in response to her having power. So, you know, I forget who the Dems are putting forth. I have to go look. So I think this has to do with the Supreme Court in Wisconsin, or the vote regarding the Supreme Court. Wow. And then now the reason they want martial law, I don't think has anything to do with the Supreme Court. It has to do with immigration but martial law would not just be, to exert undue, military presence or strength or brutality regarding immigrants, but it could be anybody who's protesting. Anybody who's protesting, it would be ideal if it was like pointing up to this, right? But any protesting against them will be seen as illegal protesting. It's already being seen that way by college kids who are protesting on campus. It's considered illegal if it doesn't align with their perspective. So this is a scary warning, especially as it's end capped. Wow. So I don't think I don't think the martial law, it will necessarily be because of the person who's nominated or not nominated with the Supreme Court. And I don't know if it's a woman or not, I forget. But it's going to be maybe like the camel that broke, the straw that broke the camel's back, or it'll be a catalyst. And then they already have it brewing that they want to have martial law. So that might give them all the more reason to think that it's necessary. Now, the final quint card is we have the Fool walking away from the whole mess. Now, the read is Skum's week. And as I mentioned, I guess the Supreme Court vote in Wisconsin is going to be this week sometime, within the week. Walking away from the mess, alienating, himself from the problem. But also the Fool is a reckless, somebody who has nothing to lose. When you have nothing to lose, you have everything to gain. So maybe it's just like he's just throwing enough out there because he feels like he's got nothing to lose. His business, it's hard to feel sorry for somebody who's got like $400 billion, but, maybe now he's down to $200 billion and he's feeling like he's a loser. But, he was already a loser when he was the richest man in the world. So he values his worth by the money he's got, but that's so lame. So it could be seen that he's just walking away from the mess. Somebody else will be assigned maybe somebody else will be assigned the responsibility or the blame. He's not worried about it. He doesn't care. But it can also just be that everything about this coming week from his actions will be reckless, careless. But he feels like he's got nothing to lose and everything to gain. So he's going to be reckless this week because I think he thinks he can affect change. I think specifically with the Wisconsin court, he's been spending an awful lot of money to change people's opinions. But things get ugly. So yeah, this was a great deck. Thank you for the viewer who suggested it. It was a great deck to use with your eye on color, because in a sea of yellow cowardice, we have one red, which doesn't look, we have one card that really suggests not just violence, but the redness of it, the realness of it, to break us from this sea or this spell of yellow. And remember, the wings of the devil are not wings of virtue, and they're red too. So I don't know. I'm getting the feeling, since this is his week, right? I'm getting the feeling that the world card suggests a victory for him regarding justice, and maybe over in Wisconsin, because the timing is right for the next week, right? And so, either that or he's just hopeful for that. He's hopeful that will occur. But I asked what would how his week will be, and as it affects us, we have a right to know. Well, since I didn't know the reading was going to go regarding, I didn't realize that the spread was going to speak on the Wisconsin thing. If I had known, I would have looked up who the person was that needs to win. Is it a woman or is it a man? Yes, here it suggests that it's a woman. Right? There's a woman involved in this. So do they want a woman? A particular woman? But either way, it looks like if a woman wins, or something, maybe she doesn't win, but something regarding that woman is like this, the straw that broke the camel's back, and just verifies in their mind that the martial law that they've been talking about and probably were planning to make a thing come April 20th is going to happen. And it's going to stir up the pot of emotions, and it's going to end to no good. So I hope this wasn't too confusing a reading. It was a very interesting reading. Until next time, friends, peace. Stay well. Please be kind.